Okay. And I did send around an agenda pretty late for this meeting around 2 o'clock this afternoon. I don't know if people had a chance to take a look at it. It's not important that you do. I'll just sort of walk us through the items, but please feel free to interrupt with questions, observations, and any other contributions you want to make. So the first item on the agenda is just to talk a little bit about the proposed way that this committee is going to work. And I'm modeling it on the process that was followed for Sustainable Princeton's Climate Action Plan, which was put together a couple of years ago. And they had basically a steering committee, which would be you all. And then there were subcommittees or working groups that focused on different areas of sustainability. In that case, one was energy, one was material, resource use, one was resiliency, one was natural resources. So in our case, I want to propose that this committee will meet quarterly and that the subcommittees will meet more frequently. And it's not required that every member of this steering committee be on a subcommittee, but it would be great for everybody who's interested to sign up for one of them. So that's the general approach. And the subcommittees, well, actually, let me stop for a second. And I realize people didn't get a chance to introduce themselves. So the social niceties I sometimes overlook, but I would like to have everybody who's on the call have a chance to introduce themselves and just say a few words about your interests in Vision Zero. So I'm David Cohen, member of council and the liaison to Princeton's Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee. And that group has been really focused on trying to move Princeton towards a Vision Zero approach to our traffic planning and so forth. And so they finally succeeded in twisting my arm to make it happen this year. So that's who I am. Marty, would you go second?
Yeah, hi, I'm Marty Lyons. I previously worked for the town of Edison for many years, and I have an interest in transportation and traffic engineering issues, improvements to roads, improvements to safety, things such as that. So hopefully I can contribute something to the task force.
And you've been living in Princeton since you were telling me?
I've been living in Princeton since 2005 and commuted to Edison.
Great, thanks. Bob Ginsberg?
Hi, I'm Bob Ginsberg. I'm the acting assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction with the school system. Prior to that, I was the principal at JP, which is, I think, why I'm on this committee, because I worked with Lisa on a whole bunch of safe routes to schools projects and so forth. And one of the nice things about being on this committee is I also used to be principal at Littlebrook, and about 30 years ago, Patty's triplets were students that I knew.
Great. Mark, Frida?
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Frida. I'm the mayor. I think one of the reasons David asked me to join this group also is that I'm head of the Princeton First Aid Squad. So over the years, have some glimmer of ideas on things that might help to promote safety for people in a whole bunch of areas. So thanks.
Thank you. Cheryl?
Hi, I'm Cheryl Kasternak, and I'm the director at Greater Mercer Transportation Management Association, Greater Mercer TMA. And I think probably most of you are familiar with us, but we actually, we've been around since 1984. We're a nonprofit that works to improve mobility, increase sustainability, and safety. in our service areas. So we worked actually quite a bit with Princeton. Those that aren't familiar, managing the freebie bus, and we actually do the annual report for Princeton University. Separate of this, we're the service providers for Crosstown program. We have a student transportation program, but Vision Zero is something that we feel really strongly about, and a few years back decided that we really wanted to try to encourage municipalities, county, whoever, to adopt Vision Zero. So really excited to see that Princeton is embracing this.
Thanks, Cheryl. Tinica?
Hi, I'm Tinica Tio. I'm a member of the Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee. I am Dutch, and I've lived in Princeton for 30 years. But before that, I lived in Cambridge, but before that, I lived in Holland, right around the time when Holland retooled itself from being extremely car-centric to becoming a much safer place for everyone on the road. So I've seen that it's possible.
Thanks. Rick?
Hi, I'm Rick Weiss. I'm the Princeton Health Department representative to the group. I've lived here for almost my whole adult life, starting in 1980. Went to graduate school and loved Princeton, and came back to live here about 1985. My day job, and usually it's day, evening, and weekend job, is I have a small digital healthcare company in Princeton that's based on the idea of an improving diet through helping providers help patients eat better to prevent disease. And I started the company 28 years ago because I was a competitive cyclist with the Princeton Freewheelers, and my wife used to teach basically foods courses for high school students at Jackson High School, and I started introducing sports nutrition to my cycling and improved. Cycling is a big part of my life. I was a competitive cyclist back then, and I'm still riding, rode 6,000 miles last year. And for me, a long time ago was part of the pedestrian cycling committee, but have lost touch with the group over the years, but it's still an important part. And I would really like to see the town be much more friendlier to pedestrians and cyclists, and especially cyclists. So I'll be very engaged on the cycling part for sure.
Thanks, Rick. Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Sarasol. I've been very interested in Vision Zero ever since I first heard about it. I'm the chair of the Princeton Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee. I have a son who is now a sophomore in Princeton High School, and got involved in the walk and bike to school events because of him. He came to me in the summer before 4th grade and said, "Mom, I want to ride my bike to school." It would have required crossing 3 county roads to get to Johnson Park. And at that point, I turned to Dr. G and I said, "How are we going to do this?" And that's when I also got to know Greater Mercer TMA, through which we then developed the first walk to school event for Princeton. And it's now become, apart from the past year and a few months, a regular event in both the spring and the fall, through educating kids about how to and where to bike and walk safely. So I've seen how this has evolved over time with younger populations. I've also seen how important it is to the whole community, and I'm looking forward to pursuing this initiative of Vision Zero with all of you.
Thanks. Patty?
Hi, I'm Patty Mahar. I'm one of the public members of the committee, I guess. And in addition to raising my 34-year-old triplets here that Bob remembers after all these years, it's incredible. I recently, well, a few years ago, retired, and since the crossing guard in my neighborhood had literally parked in my driveway for 25 years, I took him down, coffee or something occasionally. I said, "I want that job." You know, you work an hour or so a day and you get to know all the kids in the neighborhood. So next thing I knew, there was a policeman. First time in 25 years, a policeman knocking on my door saying, "Oh, we hear you want to be a crossing guard." So I for the last this is my 4th season, I've been a crossing guard over by the old hospital, by Avalon at Franklin and Witherspoon. And as a result, I have a completely different perspective on being a pedestrian, on being a bicyclist, and on being a driver in this town, because I see just how dangerous it all is, and how many things almost happen. We're lucky that we don't have a lot more accidents than we do. So
Thanks, Patty. And thank you for your service. Mia.
Hi there. I'm a current council member and I'm the liaison to the Transportation Advisory Committee. I'm not sure if that's why I'm on this committee, or I'm other than sometimes I'm sort of an honorary cousin of the bike committee, and I have been involved with them over the years, and they've heard me say many times that we like to take our bikes to New York on the weekends because it's so much safer to ride a bike there than it is in Princeton. And I do hope that at some point we'll be able to figure out a way to bike and walk safely in Princeton, and maybe this is the way. Oh, and also I'm on the traffic safety committee. So yeah, I 2 hats.
Thanks. And Veronica?
Hi, my name is Veronica Olivares Weber. I'm, the chair of Princeton Human Service Commission, also a member of, a resident from this town for the last 14 years. I'm interested in this task force because, mostly on focusing on what is the, equity and the disproportion in, in our neighborhoods, and to talk about safety. I have been part of some of the at the Princeton Nursery, some of the efforts that have been done talking to our Latino community about wearing helmets and all that is required for safety. But also I'm interested to learn a little bit more about, I have noticed a couple of places in our town that we don't have a stop signs or the flashing lights when people are crossing the streets, and I'm concerned about that. And I'm happy to be part of this task force and learn with you as well.
Great. Thanks so much. And just so you know, the other members who aren't able to be here today, we have a liaison from the engineering department. That's Ian Baker. We actually have a tag team of representatives from the Traffic Safety Bureau, which is Sergeant Tom Murray and is it Michael Schaefer, I think? Yeah. And we have a wheelchair or scooter bound member. His name is Mark Deach. That's who I can remember off the top of my head. Don't give me too hard a time if I forgot somebody.
It was Schubert, Officer Schubert.
Thank you. Great. Okay.
And DPW. Dan
yes, and Dan Van Meter is representing the Department of Public Works.
And Donna Cosgrove, is it?
Donna Cosgrove is representing the Senior Resource Center. So we have a really good group of people. And the task that we're setting for ourselves, and we've really set this up to be sort of a 1-year effort. And what we're trying to come up with is an action plan, a Vision Zero action plan for Princeton. And we have, examples of action plans from other towns. Hoboken just put one together recently. I think there are other large cities that have them. But but we want to make sure that our action plan is appropriate for Princeton and basically takes into account the particular needs that we have in Princeton, both in terms of roadway users and infrastructure challenges, which are many because we're an older town with limited roadway space. So in order to come up with an action plan, in talking with Lisa Seriasol and also Jerry Foster, who is another fellow from GMTMA who's got a lot of experience with Vision Zero, we come up with 5 proposed subcommittees of this group. And those committees would be one focused on data and metrics, which would both examine the history of crashes in Princeton and injuries and deaths. And that's a really important part of Vision Zero, is that it is data driven. So we look for what locations are dangerous and focus on trying to fix those, rather than just a broad brush trying to apply the same ideas to the entire town. But in addition to looking at past history, we are also going to be developing, or this subcommittee will be looking at, ways to track not just how and if we're improving our track record going forward, but also how will we measure the implementation of the action plan once it's been outlined. So that's one subcommittee. Then another one would be engineering and roadway improvements. So that group would be working closely with the engineering department to talk about, once we've identified areas that need enhancements, looking at the best ways to do that. A third subcommittee would be a policy subcommittee that would be looking at things like street lighting, traffic signals, speed limits. Those are all things that we know are integrally tied with roadway safety. So street lighting, obviously at night, in places where, determining where we need the light. A lot of injuries, a lot of crashes happen at intersections. So focusing the street lighting towards intersections is one example of a policy that might be put forward. For traffic signals, there are a lot of nuances to how much time pedestrians have to cross the street, whether they get an advance
Interval.
walk sign. Yeah, sorry, I may not be using the right technical.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. Where the walk signal turns green 3 seconds before the automobile traffic light turns green. That's a policy that's been shown to be very effective in terms of improving safety. So those are just a couple of examples about traffic signal policy. And then speed limits, it's very well known that the faster cars are moving, the more serious the injuries that occur when a crash happens. And so looking at places where we're able to and want to lower speed limits for enhanced safety. So that's subcommittee 3. Subcommittee 4 would be enforcement, which would be working closely with the police members of the Traffic Safety Bureau. And actually, I'm going to put up the agenda for a second, just because I know I'm talking a lot and it's probably hard for people to remember what these subcommittees are. So here's the item with the proposed subcommittees. Enforcement would be, are there any changes that want to be made to encourage I mean, our police officers have discretion, but there are a lot of things that can happen, putting out dummy vehicles to try and slow traffic in, or to get people to be compliant. We might even look at automated enforcement, traffic cameras, which were allowed for a little while in New Jersey, and then that was rolled back. But I think that it's ripe for reconsideration. That's a state policy issue, but in the hopes that the state may come around to reintroducing the ability of municipalities to have automated enforcement, we might look at whether or not Princeton wants to do that. So there are a range of enforcement topics. And then finally, public education and communications, which is a really important part, not just of getting people to understand the importance of proper behavior on the roads, whether you're in a car or on a bicycle or walking, but also to help the community understand what Vision Zero is all about. I will say, with working with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee over the past 5 years, as we've been discussing this, it's literally taken me about 3 years to understand the specifics, the specific benefits of Vision Zero policy. When it first was introduced, it sounded to me like a marketing gimmick. It was sort of like, nobody wants anyone to die, so let's try and convince people to do what they already know they should be doing by talking about deaths and serious injuries. But it's really much, much more than that. And I think that we will need to have outreach to the community to develop, support for some of the changes that might accompany this. For instance, if we drop speed limits to 20 miles per hour instead of 25 on some streets, there's going to be pushback from motorists. And so we will want to have a robust education and communications effort. So those are the subcommittees I've come up with. I am totally open if other people have ideas for other subcommittees that should exist, or if you think any of these can be combined to reduce the total number of subcommittees. I'm interested to hear that as well. I'm going to be quiet for just a second so people can.
So, hey, David, would the engineering and roadway improvements include looking at improvements to sidewalks, things to make sidewalk safety, intersections safety, or more safe, sorry?
Yeah, I think absolutely. It could be things like proposing raised intersections at dangerous intersections, much like what was recommended through the Hamilton-Wiggins Robeson Corridor study, where they had identified areas where we had had serious crashes and were recommending that kind of thing. But it can also be recommending widening of sidewalks. If we have a sense that, there are too many people or there's too much traffic on the sidewalks for a 4-foot wide sidewalk, which we have in lots of our neighborhoods, and that we want to recommend increasing the width of sidewalks, that's something else that I could imagine being a part of that. And then there are a lot of very detailed, one of the things, again, in the Hamilton-Wiggins study that was sort of an eye-opener for me is when you have lanes merging, say at Rosedale and Great Road. If you're coming into town on Rosedale, you're making the right turn onto the Great Road, or Elm, if that's what it's called there. It's extremely difficult for a driver to see, because of the angle at which the merge happens. It's very difficult for a driver who's coming through that intersection to see if there's somebody coming on the Great Road. That would be a traffic conflict for them. So there are so many things that can be done from an engineering standpoint to improve stuff like that. And if that's a high accident location, there might actually even be a suggestion that you eliminate the cut through and just say, you know, people making a right turn are going to have to wait at the light to make their right turn. And that brings up a point that I think is really important philosophically about Vision Zero, is that it prioritizes safety over speed. You know, for so many years, our traffic engineering community has been focused on how to get people as quickly as possible from one place to another. And safety was several notches down on the priority list. And Vision Zero really tries to upend that rubric and sort of say safety should be first, and then speed should come further down the line. So, any other questions or suggestions?
Could I suggest that the speed limits, that traffic calming can be put under engineering as well as policy? I mean, if I understand right, setting the speed limits is a state thing rather than a municipal thing. And so, you know, we can work on the policy, but meanwhile, let's engineer the roads so that they say, hey, I'm a 20-mile-per-hour road. And then it doesn't matter what the speed limit sign says.
Right. So I would list it under engineering as design speeds rather than as speed limits, but I think that's a good point. And that's certainly among the things that the engineering group would be looking at. But I also want to say, Tinica, that council discovered fairly recently that there was a change in state law about 12 years ago that just came to light. And this was actually what allowed us to reduce the speed limit on Terhune Road east of Harrison with no fuss, no muss, was that we had thought, you know, that we were not allowed to. And I think it might have been Jerry Foster, who I mentioned earlier, who pointed out the legislation from 2009 or whenever it was that said it gives localities the authority to lower speed limits at least to 25 miles an hour, you know, at their own discretion, and even lower than that if the municipal engineer can indicate that they've done a study, you know, that would justify it. And so what we're doing this year might constitute that study. You know, it's the legislation is a little bit vague in terms of what a study needs to be. So anyway, so I think we have a little bit more control over speed limits than we've been led to believe in the past.
David, I have a question.
Yeah.
Have you ever done a study related to, you know, where all the affordable housing are, mostly because in Princeton, the affordable housing are like so spread around, like, you know, I'm talking about Good Farms and Reading Circle. And so, because I do have noticed that there is like, you know, these kids, they have to walk to town, even though it's too far, because parents are not able to drive them, right? So I wonder if you have ever kind of, you know, it will be good for us if you haven't to focus on something that is, you know, related to what is or affordable housing and safety issues around it, right? Like whether there is like flashing lights and stop signs, and whether there is a sidewall or whether it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great idea. I'm going to suggest, Veronica, that you might want to be on the data and metrics subcommittee, just because that's a sort of great question of what kinds of data do we want to be gathering? You know, do we want to have somebody out there on a school day counting how many school kids are there who are walking from Reading Circle to, you know, or biking or whatever the case may be? But those are kinds of information that might be useful. I don't want to prejudge yes or no that we're definitely going to do that, but it's the kind of thing that should be discussed on the subcommittee and, researched what have they done in other towns. But we absolutely want equity to be a big focus of this effort. And that's part of why we asked for a representative from Human Services. And thank you for stepping up to do that, is to help keep that front of mind for us.
Thank you, David. I mean, I think it will be wise for us to add that and to focus on this. So
Yeah.
thank you.
And her husband can help with the data.
Don't volunteer for Oscar. He's helping us with the need assessment survey right now. So now he has to be in meetings, and he will kill me. Maybe we'll see.
Okay, well, we've got a lot of data scientists.
I know.
For instance,
Yeah, I'm sure we do.
I'm sure
I
we'll
think
be able to.
Dr. Ginsburg is kidding, right?
No, I just helped him with some data the other day, so I know he's into data.
Yeah. Maybe we'll see.
So based on this description of the Tinica?
So because we're all into data, I will put in the chat a link to several crash maps, which was made several years ago by a group called Code for Princeton. They took crash data that our police department collates for the states, and they put it in this interactive map. There's 3 different maps. There's a map that shows car-on-car crashes, and a map that shows car-on-bicycle crashes with the consequences, color-coded, and also a map of bicycle and pedestrian crashes. So that will give you an idea. It's interactive. You can zoom in and check out your street and stuff like this.
Mhm.
And it's a really cool way to get at a glance where the problem spots are.
Great. Yeah, and I think it's a different map, but I had actually asked Lisa to make sure she had today to share on the screen.
Yep.
When she and I and Jerry were prepping, Jerry shared this one map that basically shows the crashes for a 5-year period, and he said this is almost all the data you need to actually move forward with starting to create an action plan. Unfortunately, and Lisa, do you want to share it now?
I have the one from the presentation. I'm not sure if it's the same one you're thinking of, but it's from New Metrics, which is data from the state police.
This is the one I was thinking of.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is actually for 2016 to 2019, showing 7 fatalities and 60 severe injuries, which are the primary focuses of a Vision Zero action plan.
Right.
And just to orient you, this is 206 into Princeton, that then doglegs and goes north here. And the orange dots are serious injuries and the reds are fatalities. So then back here, this is Nassau Street. This is Washington. Sorry, not Washington.
Harrison.
This is Harrison. This is Washington. And then this is 27 going north. Let's see here. This is Mercer Street, as you can easily see there.
Up by the top is Cherry Valley, I think.
Yep.
Right.
Up here at the top is Cherry Valley.
Yeah.
So you can see how the clusters are very much on the Nassau, Washington, Harrison Street, 27, which are either state or county roads. So that's another element of this whole investigation, which is getting the county and the state on board, because since they are the dominant factor in controlling what happens on these streets, that we need to partner with them. And perhaps at some point we bring in maybe either the county planner or the county engineer to talk to us about some of these roads
Right,
as another step.
great. Thank you.
Are we done with this?
Yeah, I think unless people have questions they want to. But I think this is really helpful. So I don't want to sort of put too much pressure or shame anybody, but what I would like to ask is if you have a particular interest in one of these 5 subcommittees that you would like to be involved with, if you could put your name in the chat along with what subcommittee you're interested in, and that way I'll be able to follow up and get those set up. Tinica?
Sorry. I have yet another thing. I think public education and communication should start with an input-seeking mission, because as I'm listening in to the Vision Zero conference, almost everybody who was successful said that they spent a lot of time getting public input, which brings public engagement, which brings public buy-in. A member of the Public Transit Committee is setting up to do such a fact-finding survey. And she is extremely interested in not only doing an online survey, but also an in-person survey to just make sure to reach the people who don't normally do an online survey.
Yes, I think you mentioned that at a PBAC meeting. So.
Yeah, and I think it would be wonderful for us to collaborate with them on that.
Yeah, and I would like to add that, we're actually at Princeton Human Services, they're working with the survey, with this research center in Princeton. I don't remember exactly the name. There is a professor and her employee, her assistant who are volunteering, to do, to help us with the survey. And that's the survey that Dr. Gisborne was talking about. And, I agree, having, a university like Princeton, we actually can even ask them, if we need some help. And they always have all these people from the university who will be willing to help us with this kind of survey. And we can create one in Spanish, right? Now we're talking about equity. And I think it's very important for us to engage and to try to figure it out, what it hasn't been done in the past, and to, to do a better job.
Yeah. So let me ask Veronica, is there anything in the needs assessment survey that addresses transportation? Because that seems like a need.
No.
Okay. Is it?
It's not, but it's a need, because there has to be a lot of education involved too.
Yeah. Is it too late to add stuff to that survey, or is that already too far?
That's a great idea, because I can talk to Melissa. The survey that they hasn't been done to the people. Actually, the survey was given to providers. The providers who are helping with the service in the community. But we are actually figuring out how we're going to be able to do the survey with the community, and we're still working on that.
Okay. Well,
but I mean, if you want me, I can, I think that's a good idea to maybe add something. But if you guys can, help with some questions that we may, can add to that survey.
I think it would be great. I think, we need to multiply our effectiveness by collaborating with anybody who's working on stuff that's related to what we're doing. So
yeah,
it would be great.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna. So the last thing that I have on the agenda is to talk a little bit about we're not starting from ground zero. actually about 2 years ago in 2019, Jenny Krumiller did a really excellent effort trying to identify roads for traffic calming improvements. And the way that she worked on that was she got speed data from the roadside signs, you know, those mobile signs that tell you what your speed is. They actually record the speed of every vehicle that's passing by. So she had her husband, who's like a data scientist, do a mega analysis of years and years of, you know, hundreds of thousands of vehicle trips and identified frequency of speeding. So we know that speed, as I mentioned earlier, is correlated with seriousness of injuries, but it's a different approach than what Vision Zero typically uses, because it didn't look at where are accidents happening. It just looked at where are people speeding. I can my screen just so you can see the list. Can you see this report on my screen? It
Yes.
starts with Paul Robeson Place, Wiggins, and Hamilton.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. And then Hibben, Edge Hill, Lovers Lane, Terhune Road between Mount Lucas and North Harrison, Ewing between Mount Lucas and North Harrison Street, South Harrison Street, Jefferson Road and Walnut Lane intersections with Valley Road. Yeah, I don't need to read through the whole thing for you, but I think that this is something that it's already underway. Basically, the engineering department is focused on making improvements, traffic calming improvements to these 10 roads, because it was brought to council and it was approved at that time. So I'm not saying that we should override, you know, these findings. I think that these are good locations for traffic calming, but I think if we compared it to the crash map that Lisa put up earlier, the Venn diagram is not 100% overlapping. You know, we know that there are areas where the speeding is not happening, but that we're having serious injuries. And in fact, I think a lot of the crashes are happening at intersections where people aren't necessarily going quickly, but where the greatest risk exists. So I just bring that up to say the community has been focused on safety before we actually establish this, and we should build on the work that's been done by other groups. So that's all I had on the agenda. If anybody has other things that are concerns you want to raise, let me know, but otherwise I'll let folks go. It's close to the end of the day on Friday. I have to start cooking dinner myself, I know. So, you know, I'm going to try and get these subcommittees set up. And by the way, there's been interest in the community in working on this beyond the people who are actually included on the steering committee. And I've been telling all of them that we will be very welcoming of their involvement on the subcommittees, which is very much the case with following the model for the climate action plan. So I think that's how we will get the energy and mind power to get the work done this year, because it is going to be it'll be a somewhat heavy lift to actually gather all this information and reach some conclusions in a 9 to 12 month period. So,
David, is there a way I could get a copy of that crash map and also that memo listing the problem areas?
you bet. I will send you the memo, and Lisa, I think, I've created an Outlook group. This group is called the Vision Zero Task Force. So I believe that anyone who's a member of the group can send information to all of the members of the group by using that group that you'll see on the email
Group email.
that I've sent you. Yeah. So Lisa, if you can send a link to that map,
Mhm.
I'll share the link that she put into the chat as well, just so everybody has access to all the information. And
Thank you.
you bet. I look forward to working with everybody, and thanks for coming. Thanks for signing up or being voluntold that you were going to be on this committee, and I'll be in touch soon.
Thank you,
Thank you,
David.
Thank you,
Thank you,
David.
David.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Weekend.
Have a good weekend.
Yes.
Thank
have a
you. Have a
Nice
good
one.
Bye
weekend.
now.